We have another amazing panel discussion here with experts from the broadband community. I would like to invite with me on the stage Lance Koenders, that you know very well, Verizon VP Mobile Product Management. Please have a seat. Chem Assayag, Orange Senior VP Home Services Domain. Pedro Caldeira dos Santos, Deutsche Telekom Head of Broadband Products and Services. Paul Keator, Dish Technologies Senior Engineering Manager, Broadband Systems. Chen Li, AT&T Lead Member, Technical Staff, Standards and Industry Alliances. Endika Miragaya Saenz, Vodafone Principal Technology Manager, CPEs Software Platform. Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know everyone is extremely busy this week, and we are again so grateful for spending precious time here. We had again such an amazing session with Lance and Sophie's help this morning, talking about the next generation gateways, the acceleration of Purple OS, Purple Mesh deployments, their great support for the broadband community, and we also had Broadband Forum and Wireless Broadband Alliance with Jason and Tiago sharing the importance of standardization with you all. It's something that is a topic very dear to my heart. I have spent half of my career into the standardization requirements and organizations, and the other half until now on the silicon, semiconductors, technology providers, and strategy that is supporting that. So we have such a combination of skills in this industry, and I would like to ask you, and please feel free, I'm going to make this very disruptive and entertaining. Please feel free to pick the questions that you like most. It's not that we need to go like that in a round. You all have the mics on. I would like to start by asking you, after introducing yourself and maybe a little bit of your background, why are you here? Why are you with the Purple Foundation?
Okay, maybe I start, you follow the order here. So, yeah, I mean, we are probably one of the earlier members in Purple. If you look back in the days...
I think you were the earliest, to be clear. Because
I
remember the original conversation with Vodafone, yes.
Actually, Pedro, you know, maybe some people don't know, but we used to work together. You know?
Yeah.
I won't get there, but... so back in the days, when I joined with Vodafone, I used to work in the mobile part, right? So I joined the fixed area. The idea was to start doing services, something similar that happened on the mobile, to do it on the fixed. And then when I joined there, what happened is that, you need to deal with every device in a very independent manner. So everybody was responsive to their own APIs, they do things in their own way, and so on. So basically it was doing any work, any integration means starting a dedicated project, right? I think this is a journey we all have gone through. So the whole idea, how it started, before even the Purple OS started, by the way, it was about how can we have a harmonized, standardized, or harmonized product, better way, how we can speak to the CPE, how the services, how make it easier for all these companies that innovate, create new services, they can interact with the CPE. So that was the problem that we were trying to solve at those days, right? Then the whole thing has been evolving, Purple OS, the companies realized that they need to, take, let's say, ownership on the software, and people were making choices. Some people are RDK, some people are on RDK, other people are on Purple OS. As Lance put it, it's good to have the choice. But let's remember, I think the original idea of Purple was about, in the industry, to have let's say, a harmonized way of how services can be integrated and deliver value, right? And I do think that there is a value of really making that distinction. I get this question very often, like, guys, are you in Purple or are you in RDK? Because, by the way, we are starting
Good one, yes.
Yeah. I mean, and this question, shows there is a communication problem here, you know. We can do a better job to actually, make that distinction. What is a stack, what is software, and what other things prpl is doing. prpl is not just doing prpl OS, doing much more than that, right? Sorry, I think I talked too much.
Great helicopter view.
So for us, I think AT&T has proprietary CPA firmware. So we have the development team, and I think that initially we realized that doing any new features and integrations, it's not very modularized now. So we're really looking at a modular solution, and the Open WRT was one of the things that we're looking at, but of course it's not I think commercialized. So we want to have still some control. I think prpl just the mission was taking that scope and try to harmonize and or more like make it carrier grade. That's what we are actually fit our needs, right? And so we are kind of late to the party, but we are catching up right now. So yeah, that's why we're here.
Great explanation. Thank you, Chen.
Yeah.
I'll start off being one of the newer folks here. My name's Keator with Dish Network. I've been in the broadband industry a long time, even though you don't think of broadband when you think of Dish. I was up with other operators before this, so just to give you a little insight, I started working on broadband back in the 256 days. That's the 256K days, back with old cap technology. So I've been doing this quite a long time, and I've seen the evolution from the beginning to where we are now and been through a lot of it. So kind of, what brought us to the prpl Foundation? So we have a very unique opportunity looking at it from a greenfield approach. We're not pulling a lot of legacy technology with us. So we took a step back, looked at the landscape, and just asked ourselves, how do we want to do this? And we had certain things in our mind that we wanted to check off. So we were looking at it, we want to be adaptive across different SOCs with chipset manufacturers. We wanted an ecosystem approach because we wanted to own our own future. So when we looked at that, how do you do that? You have to really own that firmware and then own that ecosystem around it. So we looked at it, who has that ecosystem that can help us? And then we took a step back and looked at it, who has a pretty good kind of community of not only operators, but OEMs, software developers, application providers. And when you took a step back and looked at it, especially last year when we joined, it was a very compelling, ecosystem of members. And then even now you look at it, it's a very encouraging ecosystem of vendors, I would say, with all the new folks that have joined even since us. So thank you everyone for joining since then, all the new members. So we looked at it from that perspective, as we were looking at the landscape, we took a step back, answered those questions, and came to the conclusion that, the prpl Foundation was the path we wanted to go down. So here we are today.
Thank you, Paul.
So
Pedro?
I would say that for me, prpl has already a different story, as I started in a different company by working together with prpl. Even before prpl having so many different members, different operators as we have today. But for us, the focus remained the same. Before as Vodafone, now as Deutsche Telekom. It's exactly the same, which is about the community. It's about the opportunities for us to do something that indeed can create a difference, can indeed create an impact. So it comes with alignment through the low-level APIs, which everyone knows how important it is, also to have this standardization done. Is it something easy to do? No, definitely not, but this is why we are here. Things like the prpl mesh. Everyone knows, again, that there are many different solutions, proprietary solutions. We try to find a path that makes it easy for us. This is also one of the things that we are looking for. So it's not so much about the operating system, and again, what Lance did today for me, it was very important too, because it creates exactly this awareness also that we are not here competing with anyone else. We are here indeed to try to get collaboration as much as possible. And even though we are indeed focusing on RDKB, for us there are still immense opportunities too that we see that prpl is taking ahead that can make us much closer to our goals. And for us in Deutsche Telekom, this is definitely one of the paths that we want to take.
Thank you, Chen.
So, Livia, back to your question. The answer is because I was invited.
I love that one. I love it.
More seriously, I'm driving the home domain for Orange, so I'm not going to restate what Sophie said perfectly several times over the past 2 days. So I think at the end of the day, it's really about being part of an open, innovative ecosystem, which is going to drive the industry forward and bring new services, because at the end of the day, this is really about bringing new services to our customers. And all what was said by Lance or Sophie about the openness, ecosystem, low-level APIs, all of that is obviously critical to us. And we believe this is also a way for the operators to kind of be back in the game in terms of a relationship with the customers. And we have really great assets for that. One which is the ecosystem of devices. We have millions and millions of devices. Someone quoted, I think, the 1.2 billion devices for gateways. And there is something, I didn't hear that this morning, maybe I missed it, but something which is very important also to us, which is trust. I believe in terms of the relationship with the customers, the operators have a relationship of trust, which is not exactly the one that they believe they have. The customers with some other big companies. And this is a unique position to deliver new services. And when it comes, for instance, to privacy, the use of data, I think they will feel far more comfortable with us driving that and helping them, have a better life on a daily basis without being too intrusive.
Thank you, Chen.
I love that, by the way. You guys got to hear lots from me, so I'm not sure there's a whole lot new. I've been involved in Purple, before I was at Verizon. I joined Verizon about 4 years ago. Before that, I was at Intel and was involved a little bit in Purple, not as much as some of the other folks that are now with MaxLinear in this room today. But I always believed there was the potential platform that, we don't. It's funny when you think about platforms, they're very different than products, and you've got to kind of address the needs of multiple constituencies. That's the definition of a platform, right? And one of the biggest challenge with a platform is trying to seed a platform. We have a platform that's pre-seeded. We just got to make it into a platform, right? That's the part that's so amazing about this is that I don't have to attract the customers. 96% of all my customers use my hardware. Why do I have to go and attract them? I just got to bring value to them to let them get the value. So we're very excited, as I said earlier, about the open platform. We're we've been I think had a great relationship with all of you over the years, and I really appreciate that you guys are all getting up here today. So thank you.
Thank you, Lance, for bringing more insight into that. Now I know. There are so many reasons why a company active in this industry would join the Purple Foundation. It can range from things like, we understand as a Purple Foundation the importance of the standardization and the open source software. We understand how easy and nice it is for users to be able to simply download the open source and contribute and be part of that. Having all these different amazing working groups, or up to being a nice group to work with. A very amazing group of people, community with so many skills from so many different active fields in the broadband community that can contribute to make this happen. So we like to think that that's a nice, smiling, inviting foundation for everyone to participate. But now going down the road and thinking of the real capabilities that, again, Sophie and Lance have built upon this morning, and the value-added services, I very much like one, again, close to my heart, that Chen mentioned, the security aspect. If any of you would like to build a little bit on that with me. Again, during the COVID times, we have noticed such a need for the users to feel safe. Some of them were looking at the safety aspects of their data, to what extent that's covered, and then, of course, being protected from the intruders. And they felt so not at ease at home because we could not get your technical support into their homes because of the challenges that we experienced. And I know all of you are addressing that nicely to a great extent, the security aspects. If you could elaborate a little bit on more of that, I think everyone here would love to hear it.
I may start, as you said, there are two aspects, I think, to security. One which is like cyber, which means my network is safe. People cannot, get into my network. I mean, I've been living in Paris for quite some time, and when I was just putting my Wi-Fi on, I could see like 20 different networks. I could spend time just finding mine. So you see where you feel like there is a threat or potential for some concerns, and obviously the awareness of people about everything which relates to cyber is increasing. The context in that respect is kind of not very happy these days. So people want to make sure that that network is secure and no one can access the network. And then there is everything which relates to privacy and data protection. So we have GDPR, for instance, which is kind of first step. So all of us would say, oh yes, we are GDPR compliant. Obviously there is a regulation. But it goes beyond that. It's really giving the ability for people to control the data that they produce and the way they want it to be used. So maybe people don't care about the data. They want it to be largely usable by any third party, and maybe they want to monetize that when others will be very strict about the usage they want to allow. So I think we need to give the capability to the users to decide what they want to do with their data. So it's about consent, opt-in, etc. So in that respect, for instance, at Orange, we are implementing quite strict processes to get the permission from users to use their data. So, and we have to deal with the two aspects, the cyber and data protection.
Thank you, Chem. Anybody else would like to add more aspects into the security side?
Yeah, I can mention, as operators, I think we're in a unique position for security, right? If you think of security, there are three areas. One is the endpoint, the other one is the CPE, the other one is the network. We own two of them, right? So that puts us in a very privileged position to provide good security. The trouble with security is, what is the best security? The one that is invisible. So if the customer doesn't know that, it's completely safe, they don't perceive the value as well. So there is a challenge between, the value you bring on saying, okay, it's secure, but, making sure the customer perceives that value. That's another challenge, right? Because you also want to monetize that as well, right? So these are the two aspects I would highlight.
I agree with you, Endika. About a year ago, someone way smarter than me at the company realized that people don't understand security. And so they created this new thing that you actually access as part of your wireless account. It's called the security dashboard. And for any individual person, you can go in there, and it's a gamification, right? It has a score of how but it looks at your home network security, it looks at your endpoint security. So we built all these cool APIs, and what was interesting is the feature they used the most was we put quizzes in there so people could learn about things like phishing and all of that stuff in there. It was like an educational portal in there. They used it an immense amount. You can tell consumers don't understand how to be secure. So a combination of giving them a bunch of content and then giving them a gamification where they try and hit a higher score by doing all those things, they start to appreciate it. And the next big phase of that, because to your point, they don't necessarily value it. I have this mantra for the team right now that 2023 is all about how do we make it easier for customers to buy our products, to use our products, but most importantly, we got to make it easier for people to recognize the value they get from our products.
Yeah.
And that's through things like, hey, send them a monthly thing, just a simple notification. We protected you from 85 phishing attacks and 8,000 robocalls or whatever it was this month. You hit them with that and click here to learn more about how we're protecting you. Take them to the dashboard, let them learn more as they get there. We've got to do better at helping people recognize the value of security if we want them to use it.
Yeah, but this goes for security and not only, right? So picking up also the example that you and Sophie were talking before, the speed test. Right, it's exactly the same logic. Everyone can do a speed test, but did you explain to the customer what he's reacting or receiving with that? That is the trouble part. But this is where we as operators can definitely create a proper impact to the customer, which is always with the focus on the customer. And again, on our case, at least, customer is an obsession. And we do want to make sure that everything that we expose, being a cybersecurity service or enhanced security application onto it, we want to make sure that we are showing to the customer the value of it, but we are also making it simple for the customer to use it. And this is where, again, this kind of developments that we also do here in these panels, this really helps us to get the right ideas too.
Great point, Pedro.
So I think security basically, security basically is everywhere, right? You go, cyber security, data security, device security. I just want to mention that For us, like AT&T in our security office actually requires, if you have a CPE device, then some specific requirements you have to do this. So so for us to adopt prpl into the platform, we actually may have some requirements. So our team will work with the prpl security group to maybe do some modifications. Just saying, there are not the requirements built into it.
That's a great addition, Chen, because I was very much thinking of if you could provide a guidance to the community here of some of the working groups that you have been participating in, and of course we like to believe all of them are providing a great value, and I trust you all to be here with us this afternoon to learn that and see the insights, because all this great content from the working group chairs will be shared this afternoon. But providing some interesting hints from your own contributions on the working groups.
It's not fair for me to answer this because I have people that do it all the working groups.
Right, exactly.
In any order, in any order of magnitude also for accelerating that, because I think the acceleration of the deployments is coming as a guidelines from you, as a guidelines from the service provider. That's why we have the operators roundtable here to guide, and I kept saying that in the Network X panels as well. The entire communities ranging from the silicon vendors and the system vendors and the system integrators are needing the service providers to provide the guidelines, so that in terms of technical and strategy-wise, so that users are happy with the connected home. Chen and I had a great discussion in another panel on the connected home as well yesterday, that is evolving into a way that we like to have the users very much not in control, very much look into what's the difference between the control freak and the control lover. We like to have them loving to be in contact with their applications and leaving the home and knowing what's happening in the home, and all these different apps, all these different appliances at their fingertips with the power consumption included and controlling that. Could you extrapolate a little bit on that one? How would you empower from the prpl foundation, from the prpl mesh OS platforms, the control of the connected home?
I don't know if I'm going to answer your question directly, but I think there are two key things. One, which we discussed yesterday with a number of vendors, which is about the certification. As we have more and more people in the room and more vendors, the process to certify devices, services, technologies is going to be increasingly important. So I think we are ready to address this question properly. I mean, when we are only the two of us, it's easy, and we kind of certify ourselves, and we're happy with that. As we grow, I think this is going to become an increasing, not concern, but question to address, and we have to find the right way to deal with that. The second aspect, actually, it's a kind of paradox, because sometimes people come to me and say, what is your definition of home? And they're like, okay, that's an interesting question.
That's exactly the point.
And we spent a lot of time figuring out, what was the definition of home. And actually, home is not only the four walls, because now you might have like 2 or 3 different homes. You might spend 1 week somewhere and 1 month somewhere else. And by the way, a service might start on your TV, and then you get it on your mobile phone when you are commuting, and vice versa. And you want, for instance, to control your eating while you commute, and when you get home, hopefully it's hot enough to feel comfortable. So one thing that we'll have also to look at is, how do we integrate devices which are not kind of natively home devices, typically the smartphone, and you were also giving an example, and have a kind of consistent user experience and way to address all the services across all these devices, despite the fact that this is a kind of not only about being in the home. And maybe obviously as a priority, this was not the number one priority, but again, as we have huge ambitions, we will have to integrate that into our roadmaps.
Thank you.
Yeah, another aspect is the exposing the right metrics to the customer, right? I think most of operators have apps, right? So we have a good front end. Now, what information do we expose to the customer? I mean, you mentioned speed test. Maybe speed test is not super relevant because there is no one-to-one correlation between your speed test and your experience, right? So there are other better metrics. So there is a job there to define good metrics that correlate the experience to the number you're seeing, right? That's one aspect. Other one is, for example, on energy consumption. So that's becoming more relevant. So you want to be in control. Okay, how much is my router efficient or not? I was discussing with someone yesterday, I don't remember. I was from Saenz perhaps. Maybe there is a need to standardize the metrics for power consumption. So we are measuring apples with apples. Maybe if everybody exposes a different metric, it's very confusing, right? There are metrics that people understand. You remember with cameras, you have megapixels. Everybody understands megapixels, right? And there was the same metric. So the same thing probably makes sense for routers as well. That's an area probably, that can be explored.
You read my mind. You touched upon the key points. Yeah, the green connectivity, the green gateways, and then of course the importance of the standardization into accelerating that.
Yeah.
If Paul, I know lights on you. I know that you are participating in several organizations and providing insight along with the distinguished speakers here. Would you, and it applies for all of us, would you provide a recommendation for the Purple Foundation to support the community as great as it has been doing until now and going beyond that, so that we can encourage other players to join and participate and use the beauty of the open source, the platform, to accelerate?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I said, it's kind of why we're here, right? So the ecosystem that's created, there's a lot to build off. There's a lot of momentum moving this forward from a lot of great operators, OEMs, like I said, software developers. So definitely would encourage anyone to join, and there's many different reasons for that, right? It's not just a one reason approach. When you look at things from an operator perspective, kind of we've all been talking about is, you kind of got to look at it in layers. Core competency of an operator is make sure that you provide very robust and reliable service. At the core of what customers want, that is really what they want, right? And how do we do that? And how does Purple help us, do that? And, a lot of it goes back to those, value-added applications. When I look at those, I think of them kind of in three categories. There's operator-required applications. There's, call it, like you were talking about earlier, there's a user store that they can choose their applications. And then from an operator's perspective, how do you provide that QoE? There will be support applications that help us identify and resolve issues proactively very quickly, right? Because again, that's what they really want. All the other stuff is great, and the feedback loop, like you were talking about, even with security. People know they need security. Some of them look at it and go, oh, great, they're taking care of it. I don't want to deal with it. And other people look at it from the sense of, why do I have this? I see no value, right? I don't see anything coming out of it. So that feedback loop even there is very important. So, a lot of great reasons to join the Purple Foundation. We're going in a great direction. We're aligned. Someone used that yesterday. We're aligned in where we're going, and I look forward to great things ahead.
Thank you, Paul. That completes very nicely. We have been welcoming this. I'm losing my voice, and I was asking you for patience. Yeah, it has been a long week on the low frequency, high impact. But that should be the way forward. So we are paving the way for accelerating deployments. That's key for everyone here. When you look at the acceleration of the deployments on the topology side, do you see topologies playing a role into helping the home users? And I'm thinking of the...
Can you clarify topology with this question?
Exactly. I was going to get into that. Because as a service provider side, you look into the networking topologies to a great extent to have the reliability of the services, and we touched upon the reliability of the services. And when you have services on top of the topologies, because you have to have the access to the homes, the extension of the connectivity inside the homes, then do you distinguish between these needs on the use cases side? We are looking in the standardization bodies across all of them that participated here on the applications and features that are being classified by use cases. And use cases to us on the standardization bodies come from the topology side. So when it is an access network, when it is a home network connectivity, whether you need to extend, and we talked about the fiber extension connectivity all the way into the user's homes, even to every single room. Would you address that from your point of view when looking at the acceleration of the deployments from the Purple Foundation side?
Okay, maybe I'll try something here, since we're probably one of the earlier ones to deploy. I don't know that I would want to expose true network topology from the standpoint of the connections to most consumers. They wouldn't know what the hell we're talking about. I'll just start there. Understanding the list of devices that are under the management of the router domain, the network domain that we're doing, and how those devices are performing, I think is very valuable. And to the earlier comment, I think, Pedro, you talked about speed test. Honestly, speed test is irrelevant on an Apple Watch, right? Understanding the device and what does it mean for a device to be well connected, and is it well connected at this moment in time, that's useful to share with the consumer. I don't know if any of you guys saw, we did this thing with Verizon called the Verizon Smart Display. It's still being done, and there's people in this room that are involved in it. It's a UI to your home network. It's really a UI to all your Verizon services. We're trying to get away from the notion of a home network, right? But one of the cool features of that is, in addition to being connected to Wi-Fi to the router or to the extender that's closest to it, it also has a Cat-M LTE connection, so that if there is an outage that happens on the access side of it, it actually does a bottoms-up data collection, provides the topology and the connectivity stats via the Cat-M, opens a ticket, and lets somebody who understands the network topology solve that problem for the consumer, right? And then as that person who's working on the ticket is solving it, they have that Cat-M connection as a fallback to find out what's going on, initiate reboots of devices, whatever they've got to do to get it solved. So I don't know that I want to expose true topology. I want to expose to the consumer, here's the devices in your life, which is what Device ID is all about, and here's how well it's connected, which is really more about taking the Wi-Fi analytics data, et cetera, and combining it. Because the consumer doesn't really want to know how they're connected. Honestly, even as we go to Matter, as we're doing Matter bridges and all of these things,
Yes.
I don't want them to know which devices are connected on Wi-Fi and which ones are on Z-Wave or whatever.
Yes, not topology-dependent connectivity.
Yeah, they don't need to know that. They just need to know the devices and whether they're working well.
And to what extent they can have on and off those devices, yes, that's the only one.
Yeah.
The
Are
only
they
thing you need to
secure?
expose in a secured way.
Yeah, that's the way I would look at it.
Yeah,
I don't
great.
think a consumer could
Great.
acknowledge that.
Yeah, I'll talk about that a little different way. When you look at operators, a lot of them have different access architectures. And a lot of time, historically, depending on the access architecture, they had a different customer experience, right? So you really want to take a step back, and where we're all going to is independent of access architecture, that customer experience should be the same across the board. So they don't care what technology they got, they just want their service to work. And, you want them to have that constant, customer experience across the board, and it helps you from an economies of scale perspective as an operator.
Now, there is one element that we have to take into account, because you mentioned, for instance, having 5G and Wi-Fi working seamlessly from a green standpoint. We know that, being on Wi-Fi is far more efficient than being on 5G. So we are also to manage that, and maybe, with the consent of the user, tell them, in certain conditions, we'll basically switch automatically, for instance, to Wi-Fi. And we have to deal with that, because again, it's not like, it's 50% less or more, it's like multiplied by 5 or 10 when you switch to
90% less.
Yeah, so we really also have to pay attention to these kind of elements. And by the way, giving information also to the users to make the right decision also for them, because at the end of the day, it's about their electricity bill also. So in that respect, I was about to make a bad joke, which is like purple should go green. but it's very important also to have these elements in mind.
I see your point, yes.
So,
Yes.
I'm not sure exposing the policy side will accelerate purple deployment. So, so even on the legacy platforms, and we can do that actually. Although maybe purple base could do it faster, but it's not the key innovation part, right? I think the key innovation part is, so basically in the app, you've got two parts, as mentioned, right? It's, one is service product driven service, right? The other is consumer driven. So as a provider, we need to unlock, deploying a purple will unlock the innovation part on the consumer side. Whatever they want. Maybe somebody, can develop the killer app and, combined with some IoT device. And, at that time, and then people see the market, and then someone can monetize it, and it's when it's going to take off.
That's a great addition, and I already discussed that with Sophie and Lance, but would you also share with us some key value-added services, as you said, that you think will help you accelerate that, provide you the right drive? We looked at the video gaming, we looked at the education, healthcare services, exposing that sharing and making this possible to the consumers from your side. The value-added services that you would pick to make them feel they should choose you.
Well, I'm not going to be very original, but these days, everything which relates to energy is top of the list, at least in our countries, especially in Europe, because we know what is the situation. So we have a lot of initiatives around that. So it's about giving information first, what's happening, globally in my home, and giving the tools to people to make the right decision, and then maybe going further, which is really, help them manage the different appliances that they have in their home. We have an initiative which I cannot disclose exactly, but which is about really helping our consumers reduce their electricity bill quite significantly with one partner. So typically, with Purple, tomorrow we should be able to expose a number of APIs and enablers to third parties to allow these kind of services to be brought to the consumers.
Thank you, Chem. I have a last question for you, and while I'm sharing that, I would like you to think about any questions that you have in mind for learning from the service providers here. We have been talking again about the importance of standardization and collaboration. That's why we're happy to have here Broadband Forum and the Wireless Broadband Alliance as well. Everyone is trying to capitalize on cross-collaboration so that lessons are being learned on the deployment side, on the supporting consumer side. I would like each of you now, and I'm going to start with you, to explain the community, how would you encourage them to be part of this collaboration? It can be a silicon vendor, that's why we are all here. It can be service provider, it can be consumer side, system manufacturers that have to implement all your features and support your requirements for deployment. It's all about collaboration, and Sophie said it very well, and we don't want to choose between technologies. We don't want to choose between platforms, because there are value-added services and value-added features in all of them, but we need to combine and capitalize on each other's strengths as a community, as different alliances, as service providers that are not competing but collaborating, silicon vendors that are not competing, are collaborating, are sharing forces, joining forces for making this happen. What would be the advice each of you would give to the community to participate in this? And it's also a recommendation for those companies that have not joined yet Purple Foundation but are here with us, maybe some, or maybe are listening to us, and feeling the need to be part of this wave, surfing that wave of the acceleration. It's a very helicopter view question, but it has the need to embrace those challenges and be part of it.
I would say from an operator perspective, I think everybody's on the board, everybody understands the benefit. I don't see anybody. The first proof that it works is that nobody that has started the journey has gone back, or has gone back to where they were before. I think that's the best proof that somehow it works.
Great point.
And we have a number of different initiatives going on. We're collaborating, with Deutsche Telekom, for example. We're porting the Purple LCM to RDK. It's a great example of an initiative that came up suddenly and we see the need, we could have implemented it ourselves, or we can do it with other people. I think there's an obvious benefit why we'll do it in a non-differentiated area, to do it with other people. You split efforts, you basically have something that the community maintains, you don't need to maintain on your own, and there's transparency on how it's been done, and we do it all in the same way, right? So I think there is an obvious benefit. I would say, as you go down in the chain is where you see more challenges, no? On the operator side, I think everybody is very much convinced on that, and to some extent, we see now AT&T as well there, and pretty much everybody is in the same board. In the ODM side, I see also a lot of companies in there. As you go there, maybe in the chipset is where you see more proprietary stuff, perhaps, no? That's where probably we have the bigger challenges, and still there is a lot of work to be done in that area.
That's precisely what we're here, yes, to accelerate that, the open source and the sharing and building on the open source values. Great point.
So I'm the standards guy, right? I really like openness, open source, open API, and that's that's
your DNA.
Yeah, it's in my DNA. So AT&T, we as I mentioned, we joined PrpL a little bit. We try. Last session I heard that and Verizon and Orange going to deploy in the PrpL platform next year.
Yes.
Yeah, so we hope can do that.
You can share that.
Yeah, realistically, probably we are going to be a little bit later, but we are working at it and getting the necessary internal work going on. So, and we have some package, right? Because we transition from the internal proprietary platform to open source. So generally, I think the open platform is a beautiful thing. I think as we are working for the common good, and we can share the resources, make that happen. So.
Thank you so much for your contribution. Much appreciated.
Yeah. I'm going to kind of look at it from a use case perspective and go back to kind of like the why are we here? Looking at the whole equation, taking a step back, looking at why am I paying for DHCP 30 times? Why am I looking at it every time, every new development, like I've never seen it before and having to test from 0 to 100 because I have no confidence in it, right? Why aren't we all coming together on that 80% commonality and taking advantage of it? So looking at it from that perspective, again, that was one of our evaluation points, and it's like, this is a great community. This is where we're all going together. And that was a big use case of why we're here, and that's definitely something I would share with other operators, OEMs, whoever, service providers, of why, it's a great time to get involved and stop paying for the same thing over and over again, right?
Thank you so much, Paul.
You're welcome.
So I would say exactly the parts, like Endika was mentioning, of the collaboration. So for us, this is the key part. So I'm not going to go again in the situation of RDK and all of this that you all know that we're going, but the key part is the collaboration between the different organizations, between the teams, because all of us have the same problems no matter what. We're not doing rocket science, no matter what people believe, it's not. We are not being super creative with service. We're not differentiating there. Whatever Verizon is doing, whatever Comcast are doing, whatever Vodafone, Deutsche Telekom, and so on, all of us are doing the same things. But this is where these alignments and harmonizations between the different companies, the different groups, they will pay back. And this is what we are looking for. Again, PrpL LCM was one of the examples, but many others are coming too. We have the situations with low-level APIs, with high-level APIs, with the PrpL Mesh initiative. So for us, these are all key initiatives that we are looking for to see enabled in the future. It is taking a bit of time, so it's not always easy, but our goal is indeed to keep pushing for it and also to have the companies here supporting us and in the end supporting the community. And together, I'm sure that we'll be successful.
Thank you, Pedro. Chen?
Well, I'm going to say a little bit the same thing as Pedro. I would say don't be shy in sharing. I mean, at the end of the day, we are all here to make business. So at some point in time, you might feel, should I bring back to the community because this is something, this is a very valuable idea, and I will keep it for myself. So you might win once, but we'll all lose globally because If we all do that, then there is no purpose in being in a room. But if we all agree that, bringing things, as you said, most of the time, I mean, it's not rocket science, and sometimes we'll be competing, and that's life. But if everyone is bringing something, then at the end of the day, we all will be winning, because then the standard will be more richer, and we'll implement more services. So again, don't be shy in sharing.
Thank you, Chen. Lance?
Yeah, you guys have all said some great things here. We had a thing early on when we were looking at our own path here. We, believe it or not, Pedro and Endika, we did consider RDK fairly heavily. Actually spent months evaluating it. Floating all boats is an important thing. I don't know if you guys get that terminology. Some people from different things. That's this notion that the vast majority of what's in the home network today is non-differentiating for any of us. Why are we reinventing the wheel over and over and again, and why are we not more efficient? If you look at any ecosystem that has come together, it creates an explosion in overall value to all members of it. And so Brian Higgins, who's my boss that is kind of runs all of the product and devices for Verizon, he regularly will say, hey, we've got to get comfortable as operators and as a community with the fact that there's value in rising all boats. If we don't, consumers won't embrace the technology, they won't get the value out of it, and we won't be able to find those new businesses. So yeah, we absolutely need to figure out how to share, embrace each other, be open. This community has been so amazing. I mean, honestly, I was thinking earlier, Endika, about the board meeting we had here in this hotel.
Right.
What was that, 2018, 2019? 2019, I think.
2019 probably, yeah.
Looking at the number of people that were really involved and active versus what we see here in this room today, it's an amazing development, and we had COVID to deal with through that whole time. So we've made a lot of progress, and we're rising all boats, so that's a great thing. Keep doing it.
Thank you so much, Lance. Any question? Did you have time to prepare and think about it? It's your chance. Mike, I'll get you the mic. Never better said. Please.
Thanks so much. So I wanted to jump back and readdress topology. I think I read something a little bit different in the question. Today, as operators in your networks, you kind of look at network management at the element level. We manage the home, we manage the access network, we manage the core network. If we have a mobile edge compute, we manage that separately. As we look at moving forward in a services-based architecture, obviously the management of that service across the elements is going to provide a paradigm change in how we look at that service and the ability for that service to then be delivered effectively to our consumers. How much thought is being done there as we start moving from, again, element management to now the service-based architecture? Because I think from that standpoint, and by the way, Lance, I agree with you, the consumer doesn't care about topology. They don't want to know about topology. There's no interest in that. But as an operator, topology is key and important to understanding how that service delivery happens.
By the way, they don't want to know about orchestration either or any of that stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyone? Maybe I'll weigh in. I think the dream that you're going to have universal orchestration and that there's like one tool that will make it all come together is a myth. Pedro must be agreeing because he's laughing.
Definitely.
Look, we have management. I mean, heck, across Verizon, I don't even know I could count the number of OSS, BSS systems managing and orchestrating things. I think it is important that we look at it from the consumer perspective and make sure that the service is orchestrated. And as you guys know, most of these kind of systems that do this are interconnectable and they can find ways to do it. But the beauty of the gateway, and for those that don't know, when I talk about service identification, not only does what Service ID is supposed to be able to detect is, hey, are you running Netflix on that device? Are you running YouTube on that device? I mean, it doesn't know what the content is, it just knows that service. The other thing I'm pushing them is I need to know not only what it is, but I need to know whether it's healthy, right? At least if I can get it to a customer service rep or to somebody who knows all those OSS, BSS, and orchestration systems, they can help solve the problem for the customers. So a lot of what we're doing with service identification and is trying to make sure that we understand, is the service healthy, and then self-report. It's about proactivity and getting it to people, real people who
That's
can
the
solve
word,
the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Mike, it kind of goes back to the conversation we had earlier about quality of experience, right? As operators, how many people are still waiting for their customers to call you to troubleshoot and figure out if they're having a good quality of experience? Why is that? We have all the data. There's so many things we can do with the data to be proactive, to solve their problems. And a lot of operators just aren't doing it. They're waiting for customers to call. I had one, a leader, within our company, had his broadband service. I helped him fix it, and he asked a very simple question: why didn't they just do it? They have the data. I guarantee you, they can see that it was a bonding service. One of your links are down. They just choose not to do it. Right? It's that simple. So going back to quality experience, what you're going to do from system orchestration. At the end game, your goal is to proactively serve that customer and give them the best experience that they can get with their broadband, because that's really what they want at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you look at it from a service perspective, the change is that you are looking end-to-end, right? Maybe in the past you say, okay, is the network working? Is this working? Now it's the end-to-end experience what matters. No? The good example is for gaming, for example. So as a gamer, what do I want? I want to have a consistent low latency across the board. I don't care if the network is the best network, if somewhere, in my home there is something that is a bottleneck and kind of, create spikes of latency, for example. So here the tricky part is to take the whole end-to-end and say, okay, let's make all the experience great, right? That's the difference between looking in silos, right, and looking at the end-to-end experience. So it's not about the killer application. It's not the application itself, but it's about creating the experience for gamers, for example. And that it has a lot of complexity because you are looking to many elements, right? You need to look into the Wi-Fi, you need to look to the CPE, the network, everywhere. I think that's where there is a lot of value, right? And that's the difference between looking at it as a service versus, addressing specific components, right?
Thank you.